The question that I have is, we hear that the stress strain behavior of soil depends on stress path. What is a stress path? If I were to describe what a stress path is, it is a path in a suitable stress space showing the variation of stresses from one point to another in a continuous manner. Let's consider a two-dimensional principal stress space. I have a specimen here which is initially stress-free. Let's call this a state number 1. In state number 2, the specimen is subjected to these stresses. Sigma x is 5, sigma y is 10. And at state number 3, the specimen is subjected to these stresses. Sigma y is 0, sigma x is 10. I want to plot these states in the sigma x, sigma y space. State 1 plots right here because sigma x is 0, sigma y is 0. State 2 plots somewhere here because sigma x is 5, sigma y is 10. State 3 is going to plot around here, right, at that point. But the question is, how did I get from point 1 to point 2? You can see there are infinite number of ways to get to point 2 from point 1. I mean, I could follow a path like this, or I could follow a path like this, or I could follow a straight line path, right? So these are 3 of the multiple ways in which you can get to point 2 from point 1. Similarly, from point 2 to point 3, there are again multiple ways in which you could get to point 3, right? Why is it important for us to know exactly how we get to one point from the other? This is why. Supposing, say, I'm interested in finding the strain components, delta epsilon x and delta epsilon y, as we go from point 1 to point 2. It turns out that for purely elastic materials, this change in the strain components is independent of the path that you follow as you go from point 1 to point 2. But that's not true for elastoplastic material, that is the material that shows both elastic and plastic behaviors. The change depends on the exact path that you follow as you go from point 1 to point 2. Such materials are also called the history-dependent materials. They remember the history. So the strains at a certain stage depends exactly on the exact history of loading that it followed in getting to that point. The material that we are dealing with, soil, is an elastoplastic material, and this is why we have to worry about stress paths.